This one contained nothing but unmatched gloves. And something more useful. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. For once, he didn't have anything clever to say. So he died. The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" Don't be ridiculous. It chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you if so much as carry it. And if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Bernardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards. It looked like they'd forgotten to turn off their flamethrower. Surprisingly unwounded. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. "No, it's too much power. We'll rip a hole in space and time." He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? The Nexus was infested with ravens, but that didn't bother Renato. With each death, The converted Iblis stone in his gauntlets glowed brighter, and he felt stronger. Wow. He was getting a bit bloodthirsty, wasn't he?
Well, he wasn't worried. He was a warrior. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty.
Oh, now you smell even worse.
Here, fishy!
The core, absorbed in the stone, was doing its job perfectly. Bernardo could feel a little eldritch jolt every time he downed a raven, but then it flowed into the glowing stone the way water flows down a riverbed. It all felt perfectly natural, as if all his life, this was what he had been meant to do. With the core absorbed in the stone, Bernardo had enough power to challenge the Imperial fleet. First, he would disrupt the enemy communication lines. Then he would head for the rebel base. From there, the rebellion would launch its final attack. Bernardo tore through the last remaining guards at the outpost like hot coffee through snow. There was a far speaker toad here. He called the Count, and she was. She wanted him to come back to base. They had plans to discuss, and a medal to give him. A large, golden medal. Great, said Bernardo. Let's talk about who else I can kill. Then the far speaker croaked again.
Hello, Reynardo.
It said.
If you get sick of slaughtering second-rate birds in the Nexus, I'm waiting for you in the mountains.
Zenobia, the witch, taunting him. With the stone, he'd finally be her match. Zenobia was taunting him. No doubt she hoped to lure him into a trap, but it didn't matter, did it? He could fight. So where was this ambush? Bernardo couldn't wait. At Sword Fu school, she'd always studied a little harder, practiced a little longer, complained really a lot less. And then she'd become a sorceress. He'd always known he'd have to take her by surprise or not at all. But this would be a surprise indeed. Don't go away. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? The mountain paths were infested with ravens. That was swell. Every time he cut one down, the stone glowed a little brighter. In fact, everything glowed a little brighter. Look how white the snow was, and how very blue the raven blood was. Seriously, where was she? He wanted to try his new strength against hers. Renato had been to a dungeon once where all the chests had teeth and eyes. It had been a short visit. See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere. Renato felt antsy. He'd found a source of great power. But instead of joining with the rebels, he was on a fool's errand the Emperor's daughter had sent him on. The rebels were preparing a last-ditch attack against the Imperial fleet. Counting on Renato... At the end of the path was Zenobia. I thought you were going to ambush me, he said, a little put out. I owe you better than that. Well, what are we waiting for? That, she said, as a dropship poured a bucket of green liquid on his head. Drowsy gas. You can't stop me with drowsy gas, Zenobia. My power's too strong. Zenobia? Where was she? When he awoke, he was staring up at the sky. Zenobia looked down at him, brooding. I probably ought to kill you, but that'd be a bit tawdry, wouldn't it? She was tossing the glowing stone from paw to paw. This is pretty. Zenobia! He shouted, and then he fell back into sleep. Renato woke up on the Farfarer. His head ached. He drank his favorite hangover remedy, but the brandy did no good. Zenobia had beaten him again. Oh, he really should have listened to the Iblastone in the first place instead of messing around with the core. He had a bad feeling about the upcoming fight, but what kind of hero misses the final battle? Renato was bruised and tired. He wasn't looking forward to killing ravens. It didn't even seem scary. It felt like a chore, like sweeping the practice room at Swordfield School, which he'd done his best to leave for Zenobia whenever he could. What would she do with the glowing Iblis stone? That should terrify him, shouldn't it? But he just felt dull and stupid as he carved his way towards probable doom. Calaveras had once explained to Renato how portals work, but no matter how hard he tried to understand, words just flew out of his brain. There was an inscription, no spitting. It was all so unfair. He'd wanted to protect himself, protect the world from the Iblis Stone's hunger for blood and souls. And all he'd done is get mugged. Next time he owned a supernatural artifact that wanted tribute, he'd serve it champagne and caviar. Just have a dash, thought Renato. Zenobia was cleaning blood off her sword and weeping. It's so hungry. I can't stop killing, she said. But I fed it the core of the Sky Ripper, and now it's hungry again. She wept. It was true. The Iblis Stone was black again, a void that seemed to suck all the light out of the sky. Take it from me, Renato, while you still can. Okay. I'll take it, he said. Yes, he thought. This is what it means to be a hero. To save the soul of even his old enemy when it looked like all was lost. He stepped forward to accept the sword from her outstretched hand. She flipped the sword, and the blade went into his gut. As the Iblis stone sucked his soul into its infinite darkness, he could vaguely hear a voice, something like Zenobia's chuckle. Sucker. He should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up, like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.